Okay, the case style, Florida Carry Incorporated versus the City of Miami Beach et al. Case number 19-CV-22303. This is the videotape deposition of Officer Michael Garcia. This deposition is taking place at 1700 Convention Center Drive, 4th floor in Miami Beach, Florida. Today's date is November the 20th, 2020. The time on the video monitor is 10:48 a.m. Would counsel please state their appearances for the record?
Eric Friday for the plaintiffs.
Bob Switkus for the officer.
Please raise your right
Rob
hand.
Rosenwald for the City of Miami Beach.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm this testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
You are Officer Michael Garcia.
Correct.
And Officer Garcia, how long have you been with the Miami Beach Police Department?
8 years.
Have you worked anywhere as a police officer prior to that?
No.
Where did you go to your law enforcement academy?
Miami-Dade College, Kendall campus. I mean, North Campus, excuse me, my mistake.
Miami-Dade North Campus?
North Campus, yes.
Upon your employment, or let me back up, during your academy training, did you receive a book that is created or published by the Miami-Dade Police Sheriff's Office that contains a summary of Florida criminal laws?
It was a Florida statute book.
Did you cover and read that book as part of your academy training?
We had a section of law that they came in and taught.
Did any of that section of law in your police academy training include dealing with lawfully armed citizens?
To my recollection, they talked about firearms.
So they talked about firearms.
Talking about firearms and how to deal with people with firearms, if that's what you're asking.
Okay. Did they talk about how to deal with criminals who were armed with firearms?
Yes.
Did they talk specifically about how to deal with people who were carrying lawfully under Florida state law?
I can't remember.
You can't remember if they did or didn't, or...
Remember if they did or didn't, sir.
Since your academy training and before the incident on June 24th, 2018, let's back up. If I say the incident on June 24th, 2018, you understand that is the incident that is the subject of this lawsuit.
Correct.
That occurred on the Miami Beach South Point Pier.
Correct.
Between your academy training and the incident on June 24th, 2018, did you receive any supplemental training from your department about dealing with citizens who were lawfully carrying firearms?
No, not to my recollection.
Officer, do you have now or have you ever had a Florida concealed weapons firearms license issued by the Department of Agriculture?
Are you talking about me carrying
Yes, sir.
a concealed one? I have a concealed weapons license.
Okay. When did you get that CWFL?
I can't remember off the top of my head. It's been already probably a few years.
Okay. Do you know if you had it on the date of the incident we're here about today?
I believe so, yes.
Do you remember, as part of the application process for getting, you did an application to get that license from the Department of Agriculture?
Yes.
Okay. In that application process, do you remember signing an application that you were swearing to under oath?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. Do you remember language on that application that specifically stated you had read and understood Chapter 790 regarding Florida firearms laws?
I cannot remember.
Okay. But if I showed you a copy of that application, you did do that application to get your license?
Yes, it's required.
Even as a police officer, you have to do that application to get that license?
As a police officer, I believe it's required for everybody,
Okay.
to my recollection.
All right. To get a concealed carry license?
Yes, sir.
It's required that you do that application?
Yes.
Okay. but you don't remember if there was that statement on there that you had read and understood Chapter 790 Florida
I
Firearms
cannot
Law.
remember at this moment.
Okay. Okay. Officer, do you know now, as you sit here today, do you know what specific statute allows you as a police officer to openly carry a firearm while you're on duty?
It would be that statute now,
What statute?
790.
Is it specifically 790.25?
Yes, sir.
And is it specifically 790.25 sub 3?
3H if I'm not mistaken.
3H.
sorry, if I'm not
That's okay.
mistaken, I'm not mistaken.
No, I'm not trying to trip you up here, officer. On
No,
this.
but I know it's 790.25.3, but I don't know if there's an H after. I can be wrong.
Well, I can tell you H is the hunting, fishing, camping exception. How about if I tell you it was 790.25 sub 3D? Was the sheriff, police officers, game wardens.
Okay, I know about the 790.25 subsection 3, but it said H, so I can be mistaken.
That's right. You've never had training on that prior to the date of the incident we're here about today.
No, sir.
Have you had training on it since the date of the incident?
Yes, sir.
Where did you get that training?
At our police station in our training unit.
Was that just like a roll call training?
No, it was part of our annual training. It was thrown into the curriculum.
Do you know when that happened?
I cannot remember off the top of my head, sir.
You don't remember if it was covered as part of that book of Florida statutes that you were given us at the police academy, if it was in that too?
I cannot remember. I know they did an orientation on it and explained it to us, but I can't remember
At the
if
training?
if they brought in the book.
Okay.
I can't remember.
You were talking about at the training
At
after
the training,
the incident?
After the incident.
Okay. You don't remember if y'all covered that part of the book that Miami-Dade publishes in your original academy training?
After the incident?
Before the incident?
Oh, before the incident? No,
You didn't cover it?
no.
Okay.
If you're talking about before the incident, no, it was never covered.
So let's talk about how you initially became aware that there was some issue on South Point Pier on June 24th, 2018. How did you first find out that you needed to come to the pier?
I know officers were dispatched to the pier, reference men carrying firearms. I can't remember if I was actually dispatched or I responded myself to assist the officers.
Okay, so you don't remember if dispatch said, "Hey, Officer Garcia, get your butt there now," or if you just heard the
I
call?
just put myself en route to the call to assist the officers.
Wait till, I know this is new for you,
So
but
sorry, I apologize.
even if the questions are real simple, wait till he finishes asking the question, take a breath so the court reporter can get
I
both of you
apologize, sir.
down, and then
Sorry.
you can answer.
Otherwise, she starts throwing things at me.
Oh, don't worry, I think I'll become that victim too.
As
It's
long as
okay.
he throws them at you, I have no objection.
I'm sorry again.
That's all right. All right, so Officer Garcia, you don't remember what prompted you to go there, but when you got there, you met up with 3 other officers first before you went out to the pier.
Correct.
And those were officers, do you remember the officers, which officers it were that you met
If I'm
with
not
first?
mistaken, Officer Villamil, Rivera, and Sergeant Bulldog.
Okay. And I think that is the correct information of what I've got too. Sergeant Baldock was in charge, correct?
Yes, sir.
He was the senior ranking officer of the 4 of you.
Correct.
There were no other officers there with y'all at that time when you first got to the park.
No, sir. I believe it was just us.
Okay. But then y'all talked to a park ranger.
Correct.
Do you remember what his name was?
I believe, if I'm not mistaken, from my record, Vinny, V-I-N-A-S, Vinus. If I'm not mistaken.
Okay. So I was telling you, from reading the CAD report, it wasn't necessarily clear to me who, well, here, I'll show you the CAD report and see if that helps you figure out who the park ranger was or what his name was.
Here it pretty much just gives his number.
Okay.
It doesn't give a name.
What's his number?
If I'm not mistaken, it says here from what it's saying 215, Park Ranger 215.
Okay, that's the PKR 215, right?
Yes.
And that stands for Park Ranger 215?
If I'm not mistaken, yes.
Okay. So, y'all met up with him. Now, of the four initial, when I say the four initial officers, I'm referring to yourself, Philomil, Rivera, Baldock.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Of the four initial officers, all four of you met with this Park Ranger number 215 for a few minutes before you went out to the pier.
Correct.
Okay. Now, all four of y'all were in body cams, right?
Correct.
And some of your body cams, did you have a chance to review your body cam footage prior to today?
Yes, sir.
When did you take a chance to review that body cam footage?
Yesterday.
Had you looked at it between the incident and yesterday? Had you looked at it any time in between those two?
To my recollection, I don't believe so.
Do you know if you looked at it when you were preparing the report that you wrote for regarding the incident?
I can't remember if I did or didn't.
All right. So, some of you had body cams running when you were talking to the park ranger, but nobody's audio was on initially, recording the audio of what the park ranger was telling you.
Objection to form.
Okay. That's based on my review, that's what I saw. Do you remember what the park ranger told you and the other three officers?
From my recollection, I believe it was on the line that he said there was gentlemen on the pier with firearms, and they weren't complying.
Okay, he told you they were on the pier with firearms and they were not complying.
Yeah.
And did he explain what he meant by not complying?
I can't remember his exact words. Like I said, those were only the main facts I can remember at this point.
Okay. Do you know why y'all weren't recording audio when you were talking to him initially?
Once again, I can't remember.
Okay. So other than he told you they were not, that these people with the firearms on the pier were not complying, you don't remember what else he told you?
Not at this moment, not to my recollection.
You didn't make any notes in your report about what he told y'all at that incident, at that time?
I can't remember.
Okay, well, you got your report in front of you, right?
Yeah, may I?
I believe yours is on, you have about 72 pages there of report?
May I?
Yes, sir, please do. At any point you need to, just let me know. I believe you're at page 16 and 14-ish. Is yours?
Got it. Okay, can you repeat the question, please?
Yes, sir. You didn't write any notes about what exactly the park ranger told you.
From reviewing my report, no.
Okay. And while we're looking at your report, if you look at page 14 and 16, that are the two places, those are both your words that you were writing down, right?
You mean 14 and 15?
14 and 16.
I only have 16 and 15.
14's numbered up at the top.
Yeah, that's just a picture of the narrative.
Okay, that was the next question I was going to ask you. So there's a picture of the narrative on 14, but that is your narrative, right?
I believe so.
Okay. And then 15 and 16 is actually like the Miami Beach Police form with your narrative as page 16, right?
Correct.
All right. And Sergeant Baldock signed off on your narrative as he reviewed it, right?
Correct.
And your badge number is 1046?
Correct.
And that was your badge number on that day?
Correct.
So I was given a whole bunch of body cam files of officers that were there that day. Do you know how I would be able to immediately look at file names or anything and know which one was yours?
I believe our cameras are assigned to us, so
Okay, do you know your camera number?
I believe it would have, if I'm not mistaken, it would have my badge number and my name.
Okay. That was not in the file names that I got. So it's okay. I just want to verify which. So the file numbers and names I was given just say Axon Body to video and then a date, and so all of them are 2018-06-24.
Okay.
And then there's a subsequent number behind that. The one I think is yours is 1007.
I can't.
You don't know, okay.
I don't know, sir. Sorry.
Well, so this is how the file names came into me. And I'm going to play just the first minute or so of this video and see if you can tell me if that is in fact your body cam that is running here.
I believe it is.
Okay. And that's Officer Villamil that's kind of in front of and to the left of you.
Correct.
So if I look at the video as it's produced, the time stamp on it is 14:07:55Z. That references Zulu time, right? Right here?
If you mean the time, the actual time,
Yes, sir, right here.
I have no idea.
Okay. Well, let's talk about what time in the morning did this incident occur, and you looked at your notes to verify.
Per the report, this occurred at 9:50. We were dispatched at 9:55.
Okay. So 9:55 a.m. on June 24th. All right. So that's when you were dispatched.
Or I put myself in responding.
Okay. So that means it would have been shortly after, if we assume this timestamp is right, it would have been about 10:08 at that time in terms of local time.
Objection to form. Didn't you say 1407?
I'm trying to get to the,
Okay.
Do you know what Zulu time is, Officer Garcia?
No.
Okay. If I tell you that Zulu time is Greenwich Mean Time, does that help give you knowledge?
Sorry, sir. No.
All right. Can you explain to me why the timestamp on your video from your body, what we believe to be your body cam, shows a time of 14:08 Z?
I have no idea, sir.
Mr. Switkus, are you able to stipulate that the body cams are recorded based on Zulu time, which is Greenwich Mean Time?
No.
You're not. Okay.
Not from lack of trying to cooperate, but
I understand. I'm
I
asking.
know the answer to that.
All right. So, park ranger tells you that there's armed men on the pier and they're not complying, but he didn't tell you what they weren't. You don't remember if he told you what they weren't complying with.
I don't know the exact wording he used, sir.
Okay. So you don't even know if he used the word not complying.
No, he used it. They weren't complying.
Okay. But do you remember him?
To my recollection, I'm not mistaken, is referenced a sign being on the pier that no firearms are allowed on the pier.
Okay.
To my recollection.
Do you have any idea who would have put up that sign in terms of a legal entity like the City of Miami Beach?
No, sir.
Do you know if the name City of Miami Beach was on the sign?
I don't know, sir. I'm only was focused on the gentleman with the firearms.
At any point during that day, did you go look at that sign?
No, sir.
Never did.
Nope, because I was with the individuals.
Okay. Towards the end of the day, after the incident was over, were you posted at the end of the pier to monitor and keep anybody else from coming on the pier?
Yes.
Okay. Was the sign near where you were standing when you were?
To my recollection, I can't remember.
Let me finish my
No, go
question.
ahead.
Sorry. Where were you standing when you were keeping the pier closed to anybody coming on it?
In front of the pier.
At the entrance to the
Entrance
pier?
to the pier, yes.
So where the sidewalk turns from concrete to going onto the wood or fake wood that makes up the pier, that's where
A
you
little
were?
furthermore. Yeah, right to the entrance because it's a long entrance.
Okay. And you don't remember seeing a sign there?
No, sir.
Did any other officers tell you that there was a sign that said no firearms other than the park ranger?
Not to my recollection.
Is it your understanding that if you see a sign, or at least on that day, was it your understanding that if you saw a sign from the city of Miami Beach that said no firearms, that meant no firearms were allowed there?
Objection to form.
You can answer the question.
Repeat the question?
Was it on June 24th, 2018, did you believe that if there was a sign saying no firearms posted, that could be applied to anybody to kick them off for having a firearm?
Objection to form.
You can answer the question.
I believe so, if it says no firearms, but at the end of the day, our concern was more of worrying about the citizens and our safety.
Okay. We'll get to citizen concerns and your safety in a minute. I'm asking you about signs and your understanding at the time.
I understand.
So on that morning when you went on that pier, your understanding of Florida law, city ordinances was if there's a sign that says no firearms, it means no firearms.
Objection to form.
You can answer the question.
Once again, we're going by what the park ranger is touching to my recollection.
Okay. So you were relying on the park rangers' statements to you that firearms were not allowed on the pier.
Objection to form.
At the end of the day, no, I'm taking the objection that there's men with firearms on a pier in a public park with beachgoers and families and children.
Okay. So you take objection to the fact that there were men on the pier with firearms.
Objection to form.
I don't understand your question. Can you repeat
You said
it?
at the end of the day, I take objection to the fact that there were men on the pier with firearms. Wasn't that what you just said?
Objection to form.
You can answer the question.
So you're telling me, just rephrase the question because I'm a little...
Okay. Did I understand that you just testified that you took objection that day to the fact that there were men on the pier with firearms?
Objection to form.
You can answer the question.
If I take that there's an objection
Did
to
you
men,
have? Yes, sir. Did you have an objection to the fact there were men on the pier with firearms?
so you're thinking if I object to men having firearms on the pier?
Yes, sir.
Objection to form.
I would, because I'm concerned for the safety of citizens.
Okay. So you believed that firearms should not be on the pier that day?
Objection to form.
At the end of the day, once again, I'm going to elaborate. I'm going to state like I stated previously.
Okay.
Our concern is for the safety of the people in the park.
And do you believe
We
that...
have to investigate when we're called with men with firearms.
Okay. Officer, I'm not asking you about...
No, I'm doing...
Not asking you about
Sorry.
investigating.
Sorry again.
The question I'm asking is, you indicated just now that what I understood your testimony to be, and I just want to make sure it's clear for the record. Do you believe that there is a safety concern when men have guns on a pier in public?
Yes, there is a safety concern.
Why is there a safety concern when men have guns in public, Officer Garcia?
Because it's the world we live in today. We just had the Parkland shooting. We had a man walk into stores in El Paso and shoot people. Mind you, again, this park has beachgoers on one side, has families and kids in the park right next door, and you have cruise ships who go in and out with tourists on board. How am I not to believe there's terrorists with the world that we're in today, sir?
Okay.
Or at the time also of the incident.
Do you understand that citizens in Florida have certain civil rights?
Yes.
Okay. Were you trained in the police academy that people have civil rights that you're not allowed to violate even as a police officer?
To my recollection, yes.
You were taught that?
If I'm not mistaken, yes.
Okay. Were you taught that there is a civil right in the state of Florida to own and possess firearms?
A right to own firearms?
To own and possess firearms?
Yes.
You were taught that?
Yes, to my recollection, if I'm not mistaken.
But you were not taught, if I understood your earlier testimony correct, you were not taught anything about concealed carry licenses and citizens' rights to have firearms on their person in public in regard to a concealed carry license.
Objection to form.
I can't remember at the time because they did go over a lot of curriculum with
Okay.
firearms being concealment and dealing with criminals like you asked earlier.
Okay.
But I can't remember everything that went over.
As you sit here today, do you think there was anything you did wrong in how you handled the incident that morning?
No.
Okay. Have you been informed of any case decisions since the incident that would require you to modify what you did that day?
I can't remember.
So on the date of the incident, was it your understanding that you were allowed to detain any person for the possession of a firearm that you believe was armed?
Objection to form.
Yes.
So you didn't need a reasonable articulable suspicion that they were carrying that firearm illegally.
Objection to form.
Once again, in our policy.
Your policy, okay. Tell me about your policy.
Not even the policy, just even the way we're trained.
Okay.
Pretty much states that when dealing with someone with a firearm, all right, we are to do a process of records check on them and records check on the firearm. Because we need to identify they're not convicted felons, or the firearm isn't stolen or involved in any crime.
Okay. So I want to be very careful. Is that your policy as you understand it today?
Policy, no, that's the way we were trained.
Okay. Is that, so as you sit here today, you have not received any training through today that says anything other than what you just stated?
Objection to the form.
Of any training of that sort?
Yes.
No.
Okay. So your training, let's go back specifically to your training on the date of the incident, or as you arrived at the incident.
Mm-hmm.
Your training when you arrived at the incident was that any person carrying a firearm, you have a right to stop and detain to determine, to run a records check on that person and on the firearm they're carrying.
We have to make sure there's no threat to the public.
Sir, I didn't ask you about why you needed to do it. I asked you if that was your understanding of the City of Miami Beach's policy and your training on that morning. Was it your training on that morning that you were to stop any individual with a firearm to check their background and the firearm?
Objection to the form and argumentative.
Okay. You can answer the question.
Yes.
That was your training, okay. And you've received no training since then to tell you anything differently?
No, sir.
Is it also part of your training to disarm any armed person you come in contact with?
Objection to form.
Yes.
Is that a matter of your training that you do that?
Our safety.
Were you trained that you should disarm any armed person you come in contact with?
Yes.
Okay. Do you know if that is also the policy of the City of Miami Beach Police Department?
I can't remember.
Form.
I'm going to rephrase the question. Do you know if it is the City of Miami? Do you know if it is the policy of the City of Miami Beach Police Department that you as an officer should disarm any person you come in contact with who is armed?
Form.
Objection to form.
You can answer the question. Is that a yes?
Like I said, it's training,
Okay.
and they're trained, and that's how they train us
Who trained you?
with the police department.
The
And
City of Miami.
academy, the academy trained us,
Okay.
and then going into the police department.
Okay.
Same training.
So the City of Miami Beach Police Department, consistent with the training you received at the academy, told you or led you to understand that you should disarm any person who you came in contact with who was carrying a firearm.
Yes.
Objection to form with a question.
And then they also trained you that once you disarm that person, you should run a background check on that person to see if they were legal to carry the firearm.
Yes.
Objection to form.
And then they also trained you that you should run that firearm serial number to see if it had been reported lost or stolen.
Objection to
Yes.
form.
Do you know if that policy, as you just described it, is written down somewhere?
I can't remember at this time. Where?
When I was reviewing your video, you were the officer that ran and called in everybody that was on the pier's name, first of all, to see if they had any prohibitors why they couldn't carry a firearm, right?
Objection to form.
I ran the firearms.
You ran the firearms. You didn't run the people's names.
No, sir.
Okay. Did you ever find out what the result of the officer who did run the people's names were?
I believe everything, yes, everything came out okay.
Okay. None of them were prohibited from having a firearm?
From my recollection, no.
Okay. There was one phrase I heard on some of the radio traffic that one of them was an underpass.
Underpass?
That was the language that was used. Do you know what that phrase means?
I'm not mistaken, does that mean they have a misdemeanor pass?
Okay. They have a misdemeanor pass.
Passed, yes.
Okay. And that's, y'all refer to that as an underpass.
Yeah,
Okay. As opposed to what? A felony's an overpass?
over, yes.
Do you remember which individual had the underpass?
Can't remember, sir.
So when you were talking to the park ranger before you went out to the pier, did he tell you that any of the gentlemen had been threatening or aggressive towards him?
I can't remember, like I said.
Do you remember if he told you that all the pistols that they had were holstered?
I can't remember.
Did anybody have anything other than holstered pistols when you arrived on the pier?
If not mistaken, there was one that had a folding knife.
Is it illegal to have a folding knife in the state of Florida, sir?
No.
But as far as, and just so we're clear, Florida law has different definitions for what is a weapon, which specifically excludes firearms and firearms. So if I say weapon, I don't mean firearm. If I say firearm, I mean firearm, not any other weapon. There were 6 individuals y'all detained that day, right?
From my recollection, yes.
5 of them had firearms.
Can't remember how many firearms. I believe it was 6.
You believe,
To the top of my
That's okay.
knowledge, I can't remember.
as you see here today, you believe all 6 of them had firearms, but you're not sure.
I believe one of them didn't have one.
Okay. So do you agree and do you remember for certain that there were 6 individuals on the pier that y'all detained, plus a media person?
Objection to form.
Yes.
Okay. Do you remember that of the 6 individuals you detained, 5 were handcuffed, 4 were handcuffed, 2 were not?
I believe so. I can't.
Do you recall that of the 6 people you detained, 1 did not have any firearms?
To my recollection, I can't remember 100%.
Did the park ranger tell you that the gentleman on the pier had offered to show him the Florida statute regarding the right to open carry while fishing?
Like I said, I can't remember most of the statement exchange with the park ranger to this day.
That's okay. I'm going to ask you a lot of questions about what the park ranger told you, and I can't remember is a fine answer. Did the ranger tell you whether or not they were polite to him?
Can't remember.
Do you remember if the ranger told you that they were acting aggressively towards any person on the pier?
Can't remember.
Do you remember if the ranger told you he thought they were about to start shooting up the pier?
can't remember.
Did the ranger tell you anything about these men's actions or demeanor that caused you additional concern beyond the fact that they were armed on the pier?
I can't remember.
To your knowledge, when you walked out on that pier, other than the fact that these men were where they were with firearms, do you remember any other information you possessed at that time that gave you an increased level of concern beyond the fact they were A, armed, and B, where their location was?
Like I said, our statement, the only thing I can remember, like I repeated from the statement of the park ranger,
Go ahead.
and just like you said, that there were men on the pier that weren't complying, and that's all I can remember out of
Okay.
our statements.
All right.
I know more was said, but I can't remember off the top of my head.
Okay. I'm getting away from just what the park ranger told you, so I'm going to ask the question in a different way so that we're clear that I'm not just asking about what the park ranger did or didn't tell you or what you do or don't remember about what the park ranger told you. I'm now asking Officer Michael Garcia, when you walked out onto that pier, you were concerned enough that you drew your weapon, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
That concern was based on, as I understand it, the fact that these men were armed, the fact that they were on South Point Pier, right? Other than those two factors, and I will add, and the park ranger had told you something to the effect of they were not complying, other than those three factors, did you have any other knowledge or information when you drew your gun that gave you an increased concern about these men?
Objection to form.
Pretty much what's running in my mind for that time, if you're asking in my part,
Yes, sir.
being like I stated, with the Parkland shooting and all the shootings that happened, I also thought we were dealing with what we call sovereign citizens.
Okay. But that's not information you had. That's a thought that was going through your head.
Objection to form.
Correct?
Through all, pretty much all, not only me, the fellow officers, but
Okay.
but if you're speaking in my, yes, that was what was going through my mind.
We're just talking about you right
Yeah,
now.
that was what was going through my mind.
But you didn't have, did you have any specific information that these gentlemen were sovereign citizens?
We had no information, no.
Okay. So again, not what was going through your head, but what specific knowledge and information you had when you drew your gun. You knew that the park ranger had told you they were not complying in some manner or some way. You knew that they were carrying firearms, and you knew they were on South Point Pier.
Yes.
Did you have any other knowledge or information that caused you concern beyond those three factors?
Objection to form.
If
Form.
Go ahead, you can answer.
from my recollection, like I said, I'm not 100% sure, like with the information. The other information that I remember from dispatch was that I believe came from the park ranger, that I'm starting to remember now, is that I'm not 100% sure that when I guess park ranger gave out the information to dispatch, it was of men with firearms casing the bridge.
Okay. Can you describe what, and you said casing the bridge, it's not a bridge, it's a pier.
That's what they mentioned.
I understand.
The way we interpret it, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I understand there's several points on the video where I hear the term bridge, but when
Pier.
we're talking about a pier, right?
Pier, sorry.
Not a bridge.
I'm sorry. Pier.
All right. But it may have come in as casing the bridge, but when you heard casing the bridge, you understood that
pier.
meant the pier.
Like I said, I'm not 100% sure of how it came out, but I do remember hearing of 6 men casing either the bridge or pier. I can't remember what was mentioned.
Okay.
But this came from the park ranger to dispatch, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay. When you hear the term casing, what does that mean?
Usually the way we perceive that is people walking the area or lording the area.
Walking or
Or
loitering
canvassing
in
the
the area.
area.
For what? Walking or loitering in the area for
or-
what purpose is casing?
The way we interpret to commit a crime.
Okay. So you believed that, or you received information somehow, some way, not sure exactly how it got to you, that led you to believe these men might be casing the pier.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And if you heard casing the bridge, you would have assumed they meant also the pier.
The pier.
A lot of people walk or loiter on the South Point Pier, don't they?
Yes, sir.
Objection to form. A little delayed.
That's all right. Can you describe what you define as loitering, sir?
Loitering is someone that's canvassing an area, all right, walking in an area. Some may say that it looks suspicious, you know, person's demeanor, behavior. Usually in an area, you know, depending on what they're doing. There can be many, you know.
Would you consider a person on a fishing pier with a line from a fishing pole in the water to be loitering on the pier?
Objection to form.
No.
Okay. When was the decision made that y'all, the four of you, would go onto the pier and draw your guns on these people?
I believe as we were walking up.
And you described that as you were walking up. Y'all walked to the pier, you didn't run to the pier.
No, we walked.
And it was kind of a long walk.
Yes.
Okay. Is there a way to get your cars down that sidewalk to closer to the pier?
There is. Very difficult,
Okay.
but there is.
Okay. How is it difficult?
Then the space is narrow. And then with the sidewalks being narrow, you don't want your car to fall because there is a cliff and there are rocks on the other side. And also the volume of people.
So it was not so urgent that you needed to drive the car to get out there faster, right?
Objection to form.
Didn't come out as an emergency call.
Okay. It was not an emergency call.
That's not the way.
Now, once y'all, all right, do you remember the positioning of yourself in relation to the other three officers as you were walking onto the pier?
I believe I was in the middle, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay. We watched a brief video clip a few minutes ago that you think might be your body cam video, and Officer Gustavo Villamil was kind of in front of you and to the left, right?
That's the same way that we approached the pier.
Okay. You remember that that's where he was?
Mm-hmm.
And did he kind of maintain that relative position to you all the way up to where you detained the six, or at that time, 5 individuals?
Yes, sir.
Did all 4 of you draw your firearms?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, when y'all were talking with the park ranger, where were your vehicles at that time?
If I'm not mistaken, they were in the beginning of the park.
Okay.
At the end of the park, but the beginning of the park where you start to walk.
Okay. As close as you could get to the sidewalk without having to go across grass and things like that.
Yes, sir.
Did you have any type of patrol rifle in your car?
I can't remember at this day.
Do you normally keep some type of patrol rifle in your car?
Yes, sir.
What is that patrol rifle?
That is an AR-15.
Okay. Do you know what brand?
Smith & Wesson.
Is that issued to you by the department?
Nope.
Your personal
My
weapon?
personal rifle.
Or, excuse me, your personal firearm.
Firearm, excuse me.
It's going to make me mess up.
Sorry about that.
Chambered in 5.56 or 223?
I'm not mistaken, in 223.
Right. And does the city of Miami Beach authorize and allow you to have a personal patrol rifle in your official vehicle?
Yes, sir. You have to qualify with it.
You have to what?
Qualify with it.
Now, were all 4 of you initial responding officers, were all 4 of you in marked police vehicles?
Yes, sir.
Do you know if at the time you left your vehicle, you knew you were about to go encounter armed subjects?
Yes, sir.
You knew it then?
From the way the call came out.
Were you thinking at that point already, were you thinking this could be a terrorist situation?
A lot of things run through your head.
Were you thinking this could be an active shooter situation?
Could be, yes.
I'm asking what you were thinking
Yes,
right
yes,
then.
yes.
Okay. Were you wearing any type of body armor?
To my recollection, no.
Do you normally wear body armor when you're on duty?
Sometimes yes, sometimes no.
Do you know if the Miami Beach Police Department has a policy about whether or not you must wear body armor?
It's optional.
Did you have your body armor in your vehicle?
Yes.
Do you always you had your body armor in your vehicle that day?
To my recollection.
Okay. Do you know if you were so concerned that this could be a terrorist or active shooter situation, why did you not go grab that body armor and put it on before going out on the pier?
Can't remember at this time. I didn't even come up the thought.
You didn't even think about going and getting the body armor?
Nope. I just thought about responding to the call, sir.
Okay. Do you think about going and getting your patrol rifle?
Like I said, I don't remember if I had it with me or not.
Would it be fair to say that, generally speaking, if you're going into what you consider to be a high-risk active shooter or terrorist situation, you would most likely want to grab your body armor and your patrol rifle out of your vehicle?
Objection to form.
Yes, but you also have to look at the total circumstances, time, life. So, you're not going to waste time.
Was there any reports that were given to you at the time you left your car that anybody's life was being threatened?
At the time, no.
Was there any report that you had received that somebody was pointing a gun at somebody?
Never came up, no.
Was there any report or information you had that anybody was threatening somebody else?
No.
Did you receive any report that you would have considered to be an exigent circumstance that would have avoided the need for a warrant to search wherever you were headed?
Objection to form.
Rephrase the question again, I'm sorry.
You know what an exigent circumstance is?
Yeah, I know what it is.
You know what an exigent circumstance is?
Yes.
You know that you can go into certain places like somebody's house under exigent circumstances without a warrant
Yes.
when there's exigent circumstances, but you need a warrant when there's not exigent circumstances.
Yes.
Okay, you understand all that.
Yes.
Were you aware of any exigence when you left your car that day? Were you aware of any exigent circumstance that required you to get on that pier right now?
Objection to form.
Men with firearms.
Okay,
Just
so
with the information we had.
that's good. So men with firearms in and of itself is an exigent circumstance to your understanding?
It's the location also, which takes a play.
Sure. Men with firearms on the South Point Pier is in your mind an exigent circumstance?
At the time being, with families in the park and beachgoers, that was,
So, when you and the other three officers approached the subjects, y'all drew your guns. Did you point your gun at any individuals?
believe so, but I can't remember which one.
Did you hear between the four of you officers any conflicting commands issued to the men y'all were pointing
A
guns
lot
at?
of things were yelled, so I can't remember at the top of my knowledge. I know it was put your hands up, don't reach for the firearm, those commands.
Did you hear either yourself or another officer tell them to put their hands down?
I do remember that one of the individuals had an object in his hand, which ended up being a cell phone.
Okay.
So probably that could have been the confusion or miscommunication. I can't remember if it was me or another officer, I'm being honest.
That's all. But in your review of the video, you heard conflicting commands issued to the subjects that you were
Yes,
pointing
sir.
guns at.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Would you agree that issuing conflicting commands between the officers is a good way for a subject complying with one officer to be shot by another officer?
Objection to form.
Not if they're complying, but
Who are
repeat
they
that.
supposed to comply with, Officer Garcia?
officers.
Objection to form.
Are they supposed to comply with multiple officers at once?
Objection to
Issuing
form.
conflicting commands?
Once again,
Let me object in the middle. Don't
Yeah.
sorry
jump on
about
the
that.
question.
I'm sorry.
Are they supposed to comply with two different discrete opposing commands at the same time?
Objection to form.
It can be confusing.
The answer is no, they can't.
Objection to
Right.
form.
At the end of the day, it can be confusing when you're given multiple commands from multiple officers. So it can confuse the subject.
So the officers really need to be on the same page as to what commands they're going to issue, don't they?
Objection to form.
Correct.
And y'all, at least for that moment, weren't on the same page, were you?
Objection
can-
to form.
You can
can't-
say that.
Okay.
The heat of the moment.
Have you ever attended any training by the Force Science Institute, Officer Garcia?
I couldn't hear that question.
Have you ever attended any training by anybody from the Force Science Institute?
To my recollection, no.
So when you were pointing guns at these individuals, you and the other officers worked together to disarm them and to put them in handcuffs, right?
Yes, sir.
Of the 5 people out there at that time, you handcuffed 4 of them, right?
I believe so.
Do you remember which individuals you specifically handcuffed?
I remember I approached one individual, thin build. I can't remember their exact name.
Okay.
And then I approached a heavyset individual.
You'll give me just a minute, Officer Garcia. I'm going to look at the video and try and get it to the right point. Do you remember the thin build guy you approached first? Do you remember that might have been the one that you might could describe him as the more mouthy of the group?
That's a very nice way. Of
No, I didn't approach the. I do remember the one that was talking, but no, I didn't approach him.
All right. This is what I believe to be your body cam, officer. Do you know what that 4399 might mean?
No, sir.
Okay.
I believe either that's the camera number. Like I said, don't quote me.
understand.
I'm
No,
not
I-
100% sure.
I got you. Well, I'm going to back it up just a little bit and let's see if we can still identify that we think this is you with file 1077. Oh. And see if this is, if we're going to watch this and see if it's, here, I'm going to scoot it over
Just
closer
the glare,
to you.
so I can
Yeah.
give you the right information.
All right. You see that okay?
Yes, sir.
So we see Officer Villamil come up on your left here in just a second, right?
Right there.
Okay. So does that help refresh your recollection if this is you with your gun at this point?
Yes, sir.
Okay, that is you.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So we know that body cam 1077 is you now. So let's go on up here. So y'all are directing them to do what at this point?
Put their hands up and don't go for the firearms.
Okay. And I am not playing the audio right now. I'm just... Okay. So is that Officer Villamil
Officer Villamil, yes.
handcuffing that gentleman?
Mm-hmm.
And is that you working on this gentleman?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, if I told you that second gentleman that you approached was Carlos Gutierrez, would you have any reason to disagree or dispute that?
I wouldn't know them by name, sir.
Okay. He was a guy that had facial hair. He was a gentleman that had facial hair in that picture, right?
Okay.
I mean, that's who you approached, right?
That's who I approached.
Okay. And did you put the handcuffs on him, do you remember?
I believe so, yes.
Now, did Sergeant Baldock give you any specific instructions as y'all were walking out to the pier or before you turned the audio on possibly as to what formation or strategy or tactics you were going to use to do this, I'm going to call it a takedown?
Okay. I remember we went over it, but I can't remember what was exactly said.
Okay. Would that be a fair description, a fair term to use? If I use the term takedown, would that be a fair description to you of this?
I would
what you
use
did
more
here?
of a tactical approach.
Okay. You did a tactical approach. Now, you didn't draw your guns far back on the pier. You waited till you got kind of closer, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Why did you wait till you got so close to draw your firearm?
I can't remember, sir.
So I'm going to back this video up here again, and I'm going to tell you, I'll show it to you in just a second. Oh, you're adjusting and shifting your
Yeah,
chair.
I'm just
okay.
sorry about that.
That's all right. I know all that gear can weigh on your back and everything.
Not even comfortable sitting in chairs.
So I'm going to play just a brief moment of this, and it looks like at about 2 minutes and 13 seconds into the video, we're going to see Officer Villamil either putting his hand on his gun or drawing his gun. He'll be over here on the left-hand side of the screen. All right. So based on that, it looks like it's about timestamp 2 minutes and 16 seconds into the video. Does that look about right?
Yes, sir.
And the timestamp on the video is T140951Z.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And this is video file Axon Body 2 video 2018 6/24/1007, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So at 14:09:51, and I'm just going to refer to that Z as Zulu. We'll try and get somebody else to verify that that's what that is later. But at that time, y'all had your firearms out and were ordering these people to do something,
Yes,
right?
sir.
Yes?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Would it be fair to say that almost as soon as y'all started putting cuffs on, they started trying to tell y'all about 790.25 and the right to open carry while fishing?
Objection to form.
A lot was being said that they were saying. I can't remember everything on the top of my head, sir.
Okay. It's a lot of confusion, like you said, right?
You know. Yes, sir.
In that initial instant.
You know, just referring, like at that time, we're regarding to our safety and the civilian safety and even their safety.
So, officer, you've referred several times to safety. I'm going to ask you a question that I'm sure Mr. Switkus will tell me it's argumentative, but I have to ask it. Do you consider your safety more important than the citizens you were approaching right then?
Objection to form and argumentative.
You may answer.
So not to disappoint counsel.
You may answer.
Okay. At the end of the day, our safety comes first, and then I would say the citizens behind. But I would actually, in my opinion, citizen safety comes first.
Okay. Well, those people were citizens, right?
Yes.
So does their safety come first, or does yours come first, or are they equal?
Well, in this situation, if you're talking about this situation, our safety comes first.
Your safety comes before the safety rights of Mr. Taylor and everybody else that was out there.
Objection to form.
Yes.
Okay. Does your safety come before their civil rights?
Yes.
Yes?
I would have to say yes, in my opinion, because at the end of the day, I'm going to repeat what I said earlier.
Sure, go ahead.
In the world we live in, just because they tell me they're good people, criminals lie to us every day. That's why we do our records check and the guns check. If everything copes out, they're on their way.
Okay. But you later determined that nobody out there had committed any criminal violation that day, didn't you?
At the end of pending an investigation, yes.
Once you had everybody disarmed and the people you felt needed to be handcuffed, did the citizens on the pier try to tell you about the right to open carry while fishing?
From my recollection, I don't believe anybody told us anything out of the citizens. You mean the citizens that were detained or the people that were on the pier?
The people you detained.
Oh, my mistake. I
That's
thought you
okay.
meant, my
it's
mistake.
a fair error.
And guys, you're both
Yep.
doing it. The court reporter
I'm
is
so
trying to
sorry
take you
again,
both
ma'am.
down
I
at the same
apologize.
time. I'm going to
sorry.
play referee.
No, but that was my mistake, sir. I thought you
okay.
meant the people on the pier, not the people that were detained.
Fair error.
I apologize on that. My mistake.
When you started detaining the people you were detaining, do you remember them almost immediately trying to tell you about the statute?
Like I told you, when we first detained them, there was a lot of verbal going on. And once we sat them down and detained them, to my recollection, I believe they started mentioning.
Okay. Did you take any steps to research and find out whether they were right?
Objection to form.
At the time, I was securing the firearms.
Okay. How long did it take you to secure the firearms?
Once again, I can't remember. I can't give you an estimate because once I put the firearms down and everything was safe, I started running the checks on them.
Okay.
And that took a while, but I can't give you an exact estimate.
Are you familiar or have you been trained on any court decisions that regarding things like whether or not you can move items in a house to check serial numbers on it?
Repeat the question again?
Have you had any training in regards to your right when doing a search of a home? Have you been trained regarding whether or not you're allowed to, like, let's say, move a stereo to see the serial number on it before, so that you can see if it's a stolen stereo?
No.
You hadn't received any training on that?
No, sir.
Okay.
To the top of my knowledge, no.
But you have been trained that you are allowed to remove any firearm you come across from the person's holster and run that serial number?
Objection to form.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do you remember how long into the incident it was before somebody, yourself or any other officer, began to understand that there was a right to open carry while fishing and that they were not breaking the law by having firearms out there?
Objection to form.
I can't remember to the top of my knowledge. Just to add, like I said, once the investigation pending, I know the decision, but I can't remember when that time came.
Before going out on the pier, who was making the decisions as to what the tactical approach would be?
All four of us.
Did Sergeant Baldock have some superior direction because of his rank?
I believe we all spoke.
Okay.
I can't remember exactly what was said, like I said, due to the time frame. But we all came to a conclusive of what tactical approach we would take.
Okay. And did y'all all four kind of decide together that you would draw your weapons?
Yes.
Did you all four decide together that you would handcuff anybody that you found on the pier who was armed?
We would detain, yes.
Okay. Well, you can detain without handcuffing somebody, can't
Yeah,
you?
no, I understand. Yes.
Yes, you can? Okay. But y'all decided in advance that y'all would handcuff anybody y'all found with firearms?
At that time,
Before you went on the pier, did y'all make that decision that you were going
I
to?
can't remember.
I'm going to ask the question one more time so I get the question out fully. It's okay, I do understand. It's hard. Before you went onto the pier, did the four of you make a joint decision that you would handcuff any subjects who you found with firearms?
Now that you stated it, to my recollection, I remember us when we said as we approach when we were going to draw, and then we would handcuff and an officer would cover.
Okay.
Now that I do remember.
Somebody, and I don't remember who, and apparently you don't either. Somebody said, when we approach, one officer will put on, words to the effect of one officer will put on the handcuffs and another officer will cover them while they do it.
Correct.
Okay. And do you recall whether you handcuffed them first or removed the guns first?
I can't remember because everything happened so fast. I know, and I'd have to look at the video.
What would be your normal training and procedure and policy?
We pretty much cuff them first.
That'd be normal.
Yes.
Tactical approach situation, normal doesn't always happen, does it?
No.
You have to deal with the circumstances as they come up and as they're happening, right?
Yes.
And you said you recently watched the videos yesterday to refresh your recollection.
Yes, sir.
Would you agree that within about 30 minutes, within 30 minutes of y'all drawing your guns on these people, that y'all had become aware that there was a law in the state of Florida that said a person who is fishing is allowed to open carry?
Like I said, the individuals, once we detained them and sat them down, mentioned it. I was doing the records check on the weapons,
Right?
pretty much, and we were just waiting for supervisors.
Okay. Well, I'm not asking, I'm strictly asking if you, upon your review of the video yesterday, remember that it was not what they told you, but that within 30 minutes, one of your fellow officers had actually verified that this statute existed and that open carry while fishing was lawful.
I can't remember. Like I said, I know.
To the form of the question.
Join.
You don't remember that in the video,
I believe some officers looked at the pamphlet they were given,
okay?
and I guess we're doing the research, but I can't remember the time frame of when.
You didn't do that research.
No, sir.
At any point that day, did you attempt to look up and determine whether or not the statute they were trying to cite to you was true and accurate?
I remember looking, eventually, I believe, I'm not 100% at the pamphlet they gave, and read it at one point down the line. I'm not 100% sure. And pretty much, and I guess when everybody spoke and the supervisors, then we were notified.
Okay.
But me personally, I didn't do any research because I was handling the firearms.
All right. So today, knowing that statute exists and knowing that people have that right in the state of Florida, you would still have handled this situation just like you did?
Yes.
Object to the form of the question.
I'm sorry.
Do you know why it took an hour and 18 minutes approximately before you could take them out of handcuffs?
Once again, we had supervisors on scene. We were waiting for their command.
Okay. Who was that supervisor on scene?
As I advised, Sergeant Bulldog was on scene, as notified, and I believe Lieutenant Garcia.
Okay, so once Lieutenant Garcia showed up, Sergeant Baldock was no longer in charge.
Well, now it goes chain of command. Their sergeant, and then he's the commanding officer on scene,
Okay.
lieutenant.
There were several. So once Lieutenant Garcia got there, you couldn't take cuffs off anybody without his approval, right?
Like I said, they were in charge. We were waiting for our order from our command staff.
I understand the chain of command, Officer Garcia, and I'm not. All I'm asking you is it your understanding that once Lieutenant Garcia got there, you were not authorized to take handcuffs off anybody that was handcuffed without Lieutenant Garcia's okay?
Correct. He is the commanding officer on scene.
Okay. And before he got there, you weren't allowed to take handcuffs off anybody unless Sergeant Baldock said it was okay?
Correct.
At any point did you have begin to have any concern that y'all might have violated somebody's civil rights?
Objection to form.
Not at that time, no.
Okay.
We were just running through the process.
After the incident was over, did you do any research?
I can't remember if I did or didn't.
I don't want to ask about any questions you've had with any attorneys present. Did you do any type of after-action review with
believe-
command? Hold on, let me
No,
finish.
sorry.
Did you do any type of after-action review with any command staff regarding this incident?
With command staff? I believe they spoke about it the next day in roll call,
Okay.
to my recollection. And he spoke about the incident and everything. Now, and to your question, if I did research on my own after the incident, I did. I looked it up.
Okay. Did anybody from command staff ever criticize any of your conduct or actions that day?
No, sir.
Did anybody from command staff indicate that the four of you or the group of other officers handled anything improperly or incorrectly that day?
My recollection, no.
Okay. Did any of that remedial training, well, that's a bad word, did any of the training you received after the incident tell you that you are not allowed to point a gun at somebody merely because they are carrying a firearm?
Objection to form of the question.
No, because like I said, you got to take into the total circumstances. But for my safety,
Okay.
if someone has a firearm, yes, my firearm will be out.
Okay, so if somebody has a firearm, your firearm's coming out.
Yes, in the world we
What-
live in today.
Whether it's a legally carried firearm or not, your firearm's coming out.
Yes, for my safety and the safety of the citizens.
Is there, I'm just asking the question, it's an honest question, is there anything that you're aware of in Florida law that says an officer has some superior right to be armed over a citizen's right to be armed?
Repeat the question.
Is there any,
Oh,
is there anything in Florida law that says you, the officer, have a right to be armed more so than a citizen has a right to be armed on a public pier?
Objection to four.
I believe we have to be armed. I just can't remember the statute at the top of my head.
So you think there is something in the law
I
that
believe
says that?
so, yes.
Okay. Do you know why it took as long as it did to find out whether or not these gentlemen were breaking any laws?
Once again, I don't know. We were waiting for our commands from our supervisors.
Once you had them in handcuffs and had the guns taken away from them, did you search through anybody's bags?
From my recollection,
You personally?
me personally, I don't believe so.
Did you see any other officers going through anybody's bags?
I can't remember, sir.
At some point, did you hear any directions given to look through coolers to see if there was anything else that y'all could find that they were doing, these fishermen were doing illegally?
I can't remember if there was an order to look in the cooler.
Do you remember one of the people complaining almost immediately that his shoulder was injured?
Yes, I do remember one individual complaining of his shoulder.
Do you remember another individual complaining that his cuffs were uncomfortable and too tight?
I cannot remember that.
Okay. Did you ever hear any of your fellow officers make any derogatory comments about the fishermen?
No.
You never, did you hear anybody ask the fishermen, well, what did you expect, or words to that effect?
Well, they not in that type of line, but they were explained that due to the situation, that's why you're in, because we're pending our investigation in that line.
Okay. What crime, at the point where you walked out on that pier and drew your firearm, what crime did you believe was being committed?
Objection to four.
The moment,
All right, I'll back up. I'll rephrase the question. When you walked onto the pier and drew your firearm, did you believe that there was a crime being committed or about to be committed?
we don't know. That's the point, because we could say it can be committed because at the end of the day, due to the location, you have cruise ships. Not only, like I mentioned, I keep repeating the families and the beachgoers, you have cruise ships.
Do you understand that it is perfectly lawful for people in the state of Florida to carry guns even around families?
Yes.
Do you understand it's perfect?
Form.
Do you understand that in the state of Florida?
Back to the form of the question.
She got you, Rob.
Thank you.
Do you understand that in the state of Florida, it is perfectly legal for individuals to have a firearm in a city park?
Objection to four.
In a city park,
Yes.
I believe there's provisions if you're carrying concealed.
Okay. What are those provisions?
If I'm not mistaken, schools, banks, shopping centers.
Somebody's told you that you can't carry a firearm as a...
No, excuse
okay.
me,
Sure, go ahead.
No, I know banks. Trying to work here. Banks, because there's a few. Banks. Schools. I believe, no, parts you can, if that's the answer, yes. And parts you can carry.
So you believe that banks and schools are places where
Those
even...
are one of them. Those are some of them, yes.
You're just listing that those are...
No, the ones that come to my head is I know there's a few.
So you believe it's illegal to carry in a bank even with a concealed carry license?
Well, I believe depends on what the Florida statute says.
Okay. Do you know a Florida statute says it's illegal to carry in a bank with a
I don't
concealed
remember
carry?
off the top of my head.
I didn't get your answer.
Sorry.
I mean your question.
Do you know a Florida statute says it's illegal to carry in a bank if you're otherwise lawfully carrying? Do you know?
I can't remember off the top of my head, sir.
Okay. You're not of anything that makes a not aware of any law that makes a pier a prohibited place?
No.
Okay. Are you aware of anything in Florida law that says a place, rephrase. Are you aware of anything in Florida law that makes a place prohibited based on the fact that families are or may be gathered there?
Repeat the question.
You described to me there's a list of places in Florida statute where you cannot carry.
Mm-hmm.
I'll give you a few. Schools, polling places, police stations. Those are all in the list of prohibited places, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Are you aware of anything in that list of prohibited places, rather than defining things like those, that says it's a prohibited place because families might be gathered there?
Objection to form.
No. To my recollection from reading, no.
So the fact that families were out there does not in any way make the fact that they were carrying firearms out there illegal, right?
No.
So I'm going to ask the question again. When you drew your firearm, are you familiar with the term reasonable articulable suspicion?
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir. Sorry. Yes.
Can you tell me what reasonable articulable suspicion is?
Reason to suspect.
Did you have a reasonable articulable suspicion that any of those 5 individuals on the pier were committing a crime?
At the time of the
Go ahead, you can answer the question.
the time of the information gathering, no. But at the end of the day, we're taking everything into circumstance,
Okay.
like I had stated previously.
Well, you don't have to expound on every question I asked you. If you want to just answer the question, that's fine by
I
me.
know.
Excuse me. Last time I looked, I was your attorney. So any instructions that are given to you are given to you by me.
Fair enough.
So if he gives you an instruction, you're not to follow that. And that was a statement that should not have been made.
Okay, fair
enough.
enough. So Officer Garcia, you are aware of the concept of reasonable articulable suspicion.
Yes.
You just defined it as you understand it. What reasonable articulable suspicion did you have of a crime being committed when you drew your firearm?
Once again, at the time, no. But we're taking everything into consideration.
Did you have a reasonable articulable suspicion that some crime was about to be committed?
Could happen? Yes.
Okay. Not could happen.
But it was about to be committed. Let
My
me rephrase
question
that.
is, did you have a reasonable articulable suspicion that a crime was about to be committed?
Correct, yes.
Did you have one?
At the time, with the statements given to us by the park ranger and the dispatch, could be, yes.
Okay. What crime did you believe was about to be committed?
Being with the state can be a terrorist act.
Okay. So you believe you had a reasonable articulable suspicion.
Did he say 4?
Did you say form, Rob?
No.
Okay. So when you drew your gun, you believed you had a reasonable articulable suspicion that a terrorist incident was about to occur.
Yes.
Okay. And so walk me through, slowly please, for the court reporter and for me to write notes, if that's an okay instruction. Can you walk me through every factor that went into your reasonable articulable suspicion that a crime of terrorism was about to be committed?
Objection to form.
Once again, I stated the information given from the park ranger with the men not complying with
Okay, hold
firearms.
on, just give me a
Sorry.
minute so I can get it down. Info from the park ranger.
Yes. The dispatch info of men casing.
Okay.
Location being that cruise ships with tourists pass by.
Okay.
Those are the things that ran through my head.
Anything else?
I would say also the families in the park and the beachgoers. Mind you, in past, even though it didn't happen here, it happened across seas. A man walked up and down a beach with a rifle and decided to shoot people. And that was considered a terrorist act.
Okay.
Those are many options that ran through our head also.
Do you have any idea how many concealed carry licensees there are in the state of Florida, officer?
How many?
Yeah.
I have no idea.
Do you know what the Do you remember the caliber of the pistols the 5 individuals had on the pier that day? If you want to look at your notes, go ahead.
Some were 9mm, 40 cal, and a 38.
Okay. What do you carry, officer? What are you
40.
carrying right now?
40.
Glock 40?
Smith & Wesson.
Smith & Wesson 40, okay. Is that a department-issued firearm?
Yes, sir.
You've been trained on that firearm?
Yes, sir.
You qualified on that firearm?
Yes, sir.
Do you know what the maximum effective range of your pistol that you're carrying right now is?
Effectively?
Maximum effective range, yes, sir.
Could be, from my recollection, could be 50.
50 feet or 50 yards?
Could be 50 yards, excuse me, my mistake. 50
That's okay.
yards to 100.
Okay. Now, when I ask maximum effective range, we're talking about the maximum effective range at which you can engage a target, not how far the bullet
Oh,
might
how
go.
far? I'm sorry then, you should have.
That's
I'm
okay.
sorry,
I
I'm
said
sorry.
maximum effective range. I just want to make sure we're on the same page here.
Active
Definition.
effective range can probably be 30 yards, 25 yards?
I'm sorry, you said 30 and then what?
25 yards.
Okay. Would it be fair to say that, what barrel does yours have on it? 4-inch?
Believe it's 4 or 5.
Do you know of anybody that on the pier that day, citizen-wise, was carrying anything with that large a barrel?
I can't remember.
But is your pistol you're carrying today a full size?
Full compact, yes.
Okay. It's not a compact or a subcompact?
It's full size.
A 40 cal bullet fired from a Smith & Wesson full size pistol. It might travel 100 yards, right?
Yes.
But you're not going to be effectively engaging a target at 100 yards, are you?
Realistically, no.
Bullet drops too much.
Everything plays a factor. Wind.
Patrol rifle you can engage a lot farther out.
Yes, sir.
Effectively.
Yes, sir.
You ever done something called a 100-yard challenge with your pistol? Trying to actually hit a target at 100 yards?
I believe in the academy they made us do it,
Uh-huh.
if I'm not mistaken.
You have to aim way up over the target just to get the bullet to drop down onto it, right?
If I'm not mistaken.
Just shoot at it 100 yards.
Yeah.
Would a pistol actually have any practical effect from that pier out to the cruise ships?
Could, with the people standing on deck.
Do you know what that measurement is?
I wouldn't be able to tell you, sir.
Were there any cruise ships coming in or out that day, do you know?
To my recollection, I can't remember. I don't believe so.
Do you remember what day of the week it was?
It was Sunday.
Sunday, June 24th?
Yes.
Okay. Do you know if cruise ships were coming in or out on that particular Sunday at all?
I don't know the schedule of the cruise ships. They come in and out.
Do you remember seeing any cruise ships go by during this time of this incident?
I don't believe so.
Who made the decision that y'all would not give these individuals, once you realize these individuals committed no crime, there was no violation of any law, did somebody instruct the handcuffs to come off?
Yes, the supervisors.
Okay. Do you remember if that was Sergeant Baldock or Lieutenant Garcia?
I can't remember.
Once the handcuffs were off, were they immediately have their property returned?
Their property, their fishing poles and property, the firearms, no.
Okay. So even after you determined no crime had been committed, they still were not given their firearms back?
No.
Were they detained past the point where their handcuffs were taken off?
At that point, pending investigation, they were still, I believe, once it's called, we walked them to their cars to give them back their firearms.
Do you know if additional investigation looking for crimes was done after the handcuffs were taken off?
I can't remember. Like I said, that's up to the supervisors.
You don't remember that from the video yesterday?
I
Whether
cannot
one way or
remember
the
from
other.
the video even. So I can't remember from the video, sir.
So you do not remember from your recollection of the video or from your own memory whether or not there was additional detainment time between the cuffs coming off and walking them off the pier?
Objection to form.
In that sense, and doing it to before we return the firearm, we give them property receipts. That's part of our policy
Right.
to show that they got their firearms returned to them in the way they had it.
But y'all did that out in the parking lot,
in
right?
the parking lot. That's what we advised them, and that's where everything ended.
Do you remember if they were kept on the pier, though, after the handcuffs were off, but before y'all told them to gather their stuff and walk back to the parking lot to get their guns?
You mean if after the handcuffs come off, if they stayed on the pier?
No, after the handcuffs off, did y'all require them to stay on the pier for longer investigation while y'all were still figuring things out?
To my recollection, once the handcuffs came off, I believe the lieutenant spoke to them and said, it advised them of what was going to happen, to my recollection, and advised them that to gather their stuff and to walk off the pier, and that their firearms will be returned to them in the parking lot.
You know, were you the newest of all the people, all the officers that were on the pier that day? Were you the newest officer on the pier that day?
No.
Okay, who was that?
If I'm not mistaken, Rivera.
One of the other initial responding officers.
Yes, sir.
Do you know if the Miami Beach Police Department has a policy about how it returns firearms to people after it determines no crime has been committed?
From what we were trained,
For how you were trained, yes, sir.
yes. We make the gun safe. We unload the bullets out of the magazine and separate. And as I stated, the gun is made safe and clear. And then the firearm is returned to them in the back of their vehicle.
Do you know any reasons for that policy?
I would say for the safety.
Well, if you've already determined and investigated this person and determined that they're not committing a crime and that they're not posing any danger to the public, why not give them the gun back with the magazine still filled with the rounds you found in it?
Objection to form.
This was the order we were given.
Okay. By who?
Supervisors.
Which supervisor?
I cannot remember at the time, sir.
But it would have to be either Garcia or Baldock?
One of the two.
Is that standard operating procedure as you understand it?
Yes, sir.
Do you know if y'all have any procedures for when you pull over a car? Do you ask people if they have a gun in the car?
Yes.
Do you automatically take that gun if they have one in the car?
Yes.
Do you treat that gun the same way?
The way with the incident?
Yes.
Yes.
So if you pull somebody over in a car and they tell you they have a gun, you take that gun, you unload it, and even if all you're doing is writing a ticket, it goes back in their trunk.
Yes.
How are they supposed to have it for lawful self-defense then after you're gone?
Once again, this is the way we were trained.
Okay. 100% no exceptions.
For the safety? Absolutely.
For the safety of who?
Officers.
What about the citizen's safety?
We are there advised, once we're done, they can go retrieve their gun.
So they have to get out on the side of the highway and go back and get the gun.
Whatever way they feel fit.
You'd agree walking around your car on the side of a highway is dangerous though, right?
I didn't hear you, sir?
You would agree that walking around your car on the side of a roadway is dangerous, right?
Yes, but we tell them not to stay. We tell them to pull off to the side, like a side street.
So you tell them to get back in their
That's
car?
our advice that we give them.
Okay. You tell them to go somewhere else to get their gun
Exactly.
out.
Whatever they choose to do, that's their right.
And that, to your understanding, that is policy of Miami Beach Police
That's the
Department?
way we're trained.
Okay. What if they say they don't want to open their trunk? What if they say they don't want to open their trunk?
Then we advise them, well, we put it in the back seat.
Okay. So everybody that day was required to either open their trunk or open their car for you to put their gun back in it.
Yes,
Or for one of the officers to put their gun
just
back in
to
it.
put their firearm back on.
And that was so that you could feel safe.
Correct?
So you mentioned much earlier a very interesting term, sovereign citizens.
Yes, sir.
You dealt with those guys before?
Yes, sir.
Aren't they fun to deal with?
It's an experience.
All right. What have you had training from the department about sovereign citizens?
If I'm not mistaken, we had one training. Oh,
All right, so you had training from the department on sovereign citizens. Do you remember you had any training in police academy regarding sovereign citizens?
I believe so.
Can you describe for me things that you would consider either based on your own personal interaction? Well, let's do this. Let's do it one at a time. Based on your training, whether in police academy or from the city, describe to me characteristics of sovereign citizens, please.
They don't believe in government, and they don't believe in authority.
Okay. Would you agree? Were you trained that it is very dangerous when you're dealing with sovereign citizens?
Yes.
And you've already stated they don't believe in government or authority. Would you agree that a lot of the training memorandum that are put out about sovereign citizens are that many of them take that lack of belief in government and authority to the extent of officers should expect violent resistance from sovereign citizens?
You're trained that these people, yes, they will resist.
You ever watched any of the YouTube videos by any of the sovereign citizen movement people?
I've seen a few
Were those in training or just on your own?
on my own.
And they will resist with violence even, the sovereign citizens, right?
Yes, sir.
Do you have anything in your computer system on your car? This is going to sound really crazy because I know how they are about tags, but if you ran a tag and somebody's identified as a sovereign citizen, does that come up on your in-car computer?
Objection to form.
I
Do you
can't
know?
remember if it does or doesn't.
Do y'all ever get training bulletins about sovereign citizen persons known to be operating in the area that you might encounter?
We get alerts.
You get alerts, okay. Would you agree that if you know a person is a sovereign citizen, if you have actual definitive information that a person is a sovereign citizen, you are going to be in a much even higher alert in dealing with that individual?
Objection to form.
Yes, but we're always on high alert. But to that answer, yes.
I understand for example, every traffic stop, every citizen encounter is a potential danger, right?
Yes, anything can go from 0 to 60, almost a matter of seconds.
So even if you had encountered the 95-year-old grandmother in a wheelchair on the South Point Pier, you have to be cautious, right?
Yes,
But isn't there an extra level of caution that you take when you know somebody is a sovereign citizen?
yes, you take it into consideration.
And if somebody identifies themselves as a sovereign citizen when you come up, you're going to go to a heightened level of alert too, right? aren't
Yes,
you?
sir.
Or furtive, once you've identified a person as a sovereign citizen, furtive movements are going to make you a little more threatened feeling, correct?
Yes.
Can you think of any other, so you've already said sovereign citizens don't believe in government or authority. Can you tell me any other characteristics that help you know you're dealing with a sovereign citizen when you approach them?
A lot of them don't like to comply with your orders.
Okay, anything else?
They say that, like I said, they don't believe in our law. They have their own laws.
Okay. Anything else?
That's most that comes to my head.
Okay. I'm going to throw out a few other things. Let's see if we can help further define some of those identifying characteristics of sovereign citizens. They generally don't have driver's licenses, right?
Typically, no, but I've encountered some that do.
Okay. Sometimes they'll even have like a little self-printed piece of paper that indicates they are their own person or own thing, right?
Yes, sir.
And they'll say that's their right to travel.
Yes.
That's a big one with them, right to travel, right?
Yes, sir.
I'm not driving, I'm traveling.
Yes.
Do you usually encounter sovereign citizens with concealed carry licenses?
In today's world, you just never know.
Do you usually find sovereign citizens quoting Florida statutes to you as opposed to their own idea of things?
In my experience, I've encountered one that actually knew some of the statutes, but always afraid that I don't go above that law.
Okay. Did you, after the incident was over, do you still believe these individuals were sovereign citizens or part of the sovereign citizen movement in any way?
Pending after the investigation was done, to my knowledge, no.
Okay. So after the investigation was over, they don't match the identifying criteria of sovereign citizens?
No, sir.
You didn't hear any comments about they were traveling, not fishing?
Objection of 4.
Can't remember.
Okay. You didn't hear anything about them not believing in government or authority, did you?
To my recollection, no.
The only thing they ever said was Florida law allows us to do this and we're acting within the laws of the state of Florida.
I believe they mentioned that.
Objection to 4.
I believe they mentioned that.
And that type of behavior and attitude would be completely inconsistent with what your training is on what a sovereign citizen would do, right?
Objection of 4.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So shortly after everybody had been handcuffed, you and some of the other officers, not sure exactly who, pulled over away from the individuals, because y'all had gotten some backup by then, right?
Yes, sir.
All right. Do you remember you and maybe Sergeant Baldock and maybe one or two of the other officers coming over and turning off your body cams to have a discussion off camera?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do you remember what that discussion was about?
I cannot remember. I know most likely about the investigation of what we have and what's going to happen and what's going on.
Okay.
But I can't remember, to my knowledge, what it was.
Well, why turn off your body camera to have a discussion about the investigation and what's going on?
Our department allows us.
What do they allow you? You say they allow you. What they allow you to do?
They
what?
allow you to pretty much, when officers talk among themselves, you're allowed to turn off your camera.
But now as we sit here, you don't remember what was said during that conversation.
Like I said, I know it was part of the investigation of whatever was said, but I can't remember the exact words.
Okay. You didn't write it in your report what was said.
No.
You didn't even talk about in your report that y'all even had a discussion off camera, did you?
Nope.
And now you don't remember what that discussion was.
No, sir. Not off the top of my head.
So if any other officer comes in here and does remember, their recollection is going to be better than yours.
Objection in the form of the question.
When it comes to that question.
Argumentative.
I'm sorry, what was your answer?
When it comes to that question.
Do you know how many different times that day you turned your body cam off to have side conversations with other officers?
From my recollection, once.
But whether it was once or more, if you turned it off, it was so that you could have these side conversations with the other officers.
Correct.
Do you remember any conversation you had with any officer that day off camera while you were turning the cameras off?
I do remember that we talked about the statute that they were mentioning.
Okay,
That was mentioned in the conversation,
okay.
you know.
That statute that they were mentioning being 790.25.
79.25.3. And like I said, and pretty much the supervisors, waiting on the command of the supervisors. They were just notifying that that's what we were waiting for.
Do you recall if any of the fishermen had fishing lines in the water when you got there?
I believe there were fishing lines in the water.
Did you pull them up to see if there were bait on them?
I know at the end we pulled them up.
Did you see fishing tackle sitting on the bench near where they were?
I believe so.
Do you remember seeing a backpack that had little rectangular boxes in it that had tackle in it?
Oh, I cannot remember.
Okay. But you do believe you remember seeing fishing tackle out on the bench?
Correct, yes.
Do you have any information that leads you to believe that they were not actually fishing that day?
No.
As far as you're concerned, they were fishing.
Objection in form.
From what I visually saw, yes.
They may have had alternative reasons for also being there, but you, from what you saw and what you observed, there was fishing happening.
Yes.
Okay. Do you remember any comments by any other officers, such as, let's see if we can find something to get these guys on?
Objection in form.
Like I said, it was spoken in reference what they were stating, and officers were doing the research.
Mm-hmm.
You can hear that talk. Like I said, I was with the firearms,
Right.
but I can hear the talk.
Okay. Did you witness any officer take pictures of any of the firearms?
I believe there was an officer that took pictures of the
Do you remember
firearms.
which officer that was?
I cannot remember.
Do you remember seeing any officers taking pictures of their these individuals that had concealed carry licenses?
That I can't remember if they took pictures of.
Do you remember anybody being instructed to go look at the sign that the park ranger was talking about?
To my top of my knowledge, no.
Well, you already told me you didn't do it. I was just asking if you heard anybody
I
else.
did not hear my.
Can't talk at the same time.
I was just asking if you heard anybody else be instructed to go look at the sign.
Am I right? No.
So is the pistol that's on this video that you're pointing at Mr. Taylor and Gutierrez and Philpott, is that the same pistol you're carrying today?
Objection
sir.
in form.
Yes, sir.
Okay. You told me already it was a full-size 40 cal. How many rounds does it hold?
If I'm not mistaken, 17.
Plus one in the mag, or 17 in the mag plus 1?
16, and then I think the 17's in the chamber.
Okay, so 16 plus 1.
Total, yeah.
Okay, 17 total.
My mistake.
That's all right. And just so we're clear, you actually pointed it at them, not just down at Low Ready, right?
No, it
Objection in the form of the question.
was pointed directly at them.
Okay. Can you describe what Low Ready is?
Pretty much the gun is at low, below your face.
Since we have the fortune to have a videographer here, without your gun, please, could you hold your hands in approximately what the position of Low Ready would be?
Yes. Pretty much down to here.
Okay, but not actually pointing at anybody.
No, this is fully point. This is low ready.
And when you raise your arms up and say this is fully point, that is how you were pointing at these gentlemen when you approached them on the pier.
Correct.
Okay. And just so we're clear, any person doing that to another person without a legal basis to do so, that's called aggravated assault, right?
Objection in the form.
Aggravated assault
Yes.
by law.
By law, it's aggravated assault. Okay. And touching another person without their consent or a valid legal reason to do so is called battery, right?
Objection in the form.
By law.
And keeping somebody detained in a place without a legal reason to do so, that's called false imprisonment, right?
Objection in the form.
By law.
Are you aware, did you believe on that day, sir, that the city had some ordinance that prohibited firearms from being on the pier?
Repeat the question. I didn't hear you. I'm sorry.
Did you believe on that day that the city had some ordinance or rule that prohibited firearms on the pier?
Not to my recollection.
You
I
didn't
can't remember. No.
Okay. And you didn't think there was some state law that prohibited firearms being on the pier?
From my experience, no.
So as far as you knew, the possession of firearms on that pier was a lawful thing?
Objection in the form of the question.
At the time, yes. From what you're stating, yes.
Okay. That's all I'm asking is, having the firearms out there was lawful, right?
Objection in the form.
Yes.
Form.
But you also wanted to consider the totality of circumstances and investigate this circumstance and situation, right?
Yes.
Are you aware now, as you sit here today, that there's actually a state law that prohibits the city of Miami Beach from having its own rules or ordinances about firearms?
Repeat it again. I didn't hear you. That's what I
As you
didn't
sit
understand.
here today, are you aware that there is a state statute in Florida law that prohibits the city of Miami Beach from having its own rules, regulations, policies, or ordinances regarding firearms?
I know they have their ordinances.
You know who has what ordinances?
Miami Beach has their ordinance.
To your knowledge, does Miami Beach have an ordinance about firearms?
I cannot remember right now. No.
Okay. Are you aware that there is a state law that prohibits the city of Miami Beach from creating or enforcing any ordinances regarding firearms?
Objection in the form.
No.
The form.
You're not aware of that?
Not aware of that. No.
Okay.
Sorry, I didn't rephrase.
Do you know if it was verified that every person out there that was fishing had a fishing license?
Objection in the
You mean
form.
the men detained?
Yes, sir.
I believe it was checked to see if they had fishing license.
Mhm.
I don't know which individual did. I know some did have, or I believe they did have.
Okay. Are you aware of anybody that was fishing without having a license of those people?
I can't remember on top of my knowledge. No.
Back to the sovereign citizen question. Would you agree that calling somebody a sovereign citizen that isn't could endanger them in future encounters with police officers?
Objection in the form.
By calling them,
Form.
Would you agree that having a police record as being a sovereign citizen might create a heightened danger for a citizen in the future with a future police officer?
Objection in the form.
I wouldn't say so, but it would increase, like you had mentioned, the alert of dealing with an officer.
You would agree that people should not be identified as sovereign citizens in a police report if they're not sovereign citizens.
Objection to form.
They shouldn't if they're not. If they're not, no.
Now, you've mentioned several times today the world we live in today, the world as it is today. I don't think you were talking about COVID, right?
No.
Okay. Because we want to talk about in 2018 terms, because that's when this occurred, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, when you've said throughout this deposition, the world we live in, the way things are today, in terms of only stuff before that incident on June 24th, 2018, can you tell me what you mean when you say the world we live in today or the world as it is today?
Do you mean the time frame before the incident?
Yes, sir.
Or now?
Before the incident.
Well, as I mentioned earlier, you had the Parkland shooting.
Mm-hmm.
You had the man in El Paso. And you had multiple other incidents that I can't remember off the top of my head.
You say multiple other instances. What do you mean multiple other
I
instances?
can't remember off the top of my head.
No.
Because I know I've seen the news and there was other shootings, police involved.
That's the phrase I was trying to get.
Yeah,
You said multiple other incidents. You mean multiple other shooting incidents.
shootings. I should have clarified. I'm sorry.
Okay. So, based on the fact that your awareness of Parkland, your awareness of El Paso, your awareness of multiple other shooting incidents that had happened before June 24, 2018, those other events happening means that you as an officer must take certain actions anytime you encounter an armed citizen.
Objection to form.
Yes.
That's what you're saying.
For our safety and the safety of the citizens.
Now, when you say for your safety and the safety of the citizens, do you mean the safety of the other citizens or the safety of the citizen with the firearm, or both?
Objection to form.
It can be both.
It can be both. Do you mean it as both?
Yes.
Okay.
You take everybody into circumstance.
So it's your position that when you encounter a citizen who is lawfully carrying a firearm, for both their safety and yours, you should take the firearm away from them.
Objection to form of the question.
Yes.
Object to the form of the question.
Bob, I don't want to instruct your witness again. Would you please explain to him, if you have not already, that he can still answer whenever he hears object to form? Because I'm wondering if he's understanding that, and I'm tired of. I don't want to have to instruct him because I don't want to draw another objection.
He did answer your question.
Okay. All right, so officer, so it's your position that is it your position that you disarming a lawfully armed citizen somehow makes that citizen more safe?
Objection to the form of the question.
Yes.
Why does that make that citizen more safe?
At the end of the day, because in the encounters, we don't want any encounters.
Okay.
All right. The more
What do you mean encounter?
And compliance. All right. And just comply. If everything clears, you'll be on your way.
Okay.
Because in our experience, people do tend to resist.
People who you are accusing of a crime tend to resist.
Objection to the form of the question.
It can be anything of a crime to even a stop.
Are you aware of any law that gives you the authority to take away some person's gun merely so you can check to see if that gun is stolen?
Objection in the form of the question.
Once again, it depends on the circumstances, but like I said, we are trained for our safety and the safety of the citizens that you are disarmed because, once again, as police officers, we are lied to every day. Depending on what that investigation or why the reason we're stopping them, if they are armed, we have to take our policy and procedures of running checks and running checks on the firearm. Once again, just because the individual says, I'm a good person, people lie to us every day as police officers. So we want to verify that they have not convicted felons and the gun is not stolen or used in the committal of a crime. Why we do records check.
Okay. Do police officers lie? Do police officers lie?
Objection in the form of the question, argumentative.
No, he stated.
Yes.
He stated.
You can state
Yes.
what your intent was, and I
yes.
can put on the
Police
record
officers-
that you're
Nobody-
being argumentative.
Sorry,
so
sorry,
we're not going to
sorry.
talk altogether.
Nope.
And if you say no, I'm going to say yes.
I was.
What? There's no question pending.
All right, let's go see. I'll try it again. Do police officers lie?
Objection in the form of the question,
Yes.
argumentative.
Are you actually taught in the police academy that sometimes telling a lie to a suspect can elicit information you would not otherwise get?
To my recollection, yes.
So you're taught that lying is an effective technique to help investigate and discover criminal activity.
Objection in the form of the question.
Depending on the investigation.
Okay. And depending on whether the person truly is a good person or a bad person, they may lie about being a good person.
Yes.
Does the fact that some people lie mean that lawfully armed citizens have less of a right to keep their firearm with them?
Objection in the form of the question and argumentative.
Repeat the question so I understand a little bit better. I'm sorry.
You understand that people have a right in this country and in this state to carry a firearm in public in certain circumstances, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So given that they have that civil right, does the fact that some people lie to you about whether or not they're a good person justify you disarming every single person you encounter who is carrying a firearm?
Yes.
Objection in the form of the question. I think Rob just texted me we lost him.
Okay, well, I tell you what, I want to take a break anyway, if y'all don't mind. I mean, we've been at it for about an hour and a half, I think, and I think I'm almost done anyway. So if you'll let me take a quick break, go through my notes again, I may be able to cut you loose.
Off the video record.
I'm here.
46.
Here regardless.
Okay, we're back on the video record at 12:06 p.m.
Officer Garcia, I'm going to ask you a hypothetical here. It's going to sound a little bit crazy, but...
Counsel, you got your mic on?
Oh, sorry. Thank you. I'm going to ask you a hypothetical. It's going to sound a little bit crazy, but if these gentlemen had been out there wearing black armbands with a swastika on them, would you have detained and searched them?
Objection to form.
If there was reason to suspicion.
What kind of suspicion would you have to detain such people?
Once again, it's any reason that we're called upon.
Okay. So the fact that you were called, and just so we're clear, I'm not trying to yell at you, I'm just trying to make sure
no,
Mr.
I
Rosenwald can hear. The fact that you were called to the scene and that these men were armed, in your opinion, gave you the authority to detain them and search them?
Objection to form.
Investigate.
Okay. Gave you the authority to investigate.
Yes, sir.
Part of your investigation, though, was making the scene safe.
Yes.
And making the scene safe, according to your training, is disarm any person there with a firearm who is not a police officer.
Objection to form.
Yes.
That's your training.
Training, yes, because once again, I'm repeating, safety comes into play, the total circumstance comes into play. Once again, we have to investigate who these individuals and identify them. Just because they tell us one thing doesn't mean that's why we do our records check.
So I understand the totality of circumstances. do you need anything other than the fact that they are armed and you were called to be able to disarm them?
Objection to the form.
Once again, it's part of pending the investigation, the reason we were called. By the details we were given from the call.
So the fact that they were armed and you were called is not enough to disarm them. It's only the additional details you were given that made it okay to disarm them.
Once again, it's part of our training, and due to pending our investigation.
Okay. So your training is the fact that somebody is armed and you are called justifies disarming the individuals while you investigate.
Objection to the form. That's at least the 6th time you've asked the same question, counsel.
I'm going to keep asking until I get an answer.
You got an answer every single time.
It's our training and pending the outcome of the investigation. Mind you, we're there due to the reason we were called for.
Okay. And the reason you were called for was?
Armed men casing an area.
Okay.
That's what we got from the dispatch.
How long did it take you to figure out these individuals were not casing the area?
Objection to form.
Once again, we're taking everything into part of the investigation. Once we identified who they were, we ran their records check, we ran the weapons, and everything came back okay. And, you know, everybody, like we said, some officers did their research, and we were waiting for supervisors' orders. But in that time frame, pending the outcome of all that.
You were trained both by the police academy and by the Miami Beach Police Department to disarm all people that you encounter who are carrying a firearm.
Objection to the form of the question.
Once again, for our safety. We don't know who we're interacting with.
It's a yes or no, Officer Garcia. You either are or you are not trained to disarm every individual you encounter with a firearm.
Excuse me. I object to the form, and that's the 8th time. You
Okay.
can answer the question.
Yes or no, officer, is it your training to disarm every person you encounter with a firearm?
Objection to the form, asked and answered, and you've qualified it every time you've answered it, and this is the last time you're going to answer it. Go right ahead and answer.
Due to our training and our investigation of the way we are trained, we take everything to circumstance, safety being the #1 priority.
Okay. Is there ever a circumstance where you don't disarm an armed citizen for your safety when you are investigating them?
Objection to form.
No, they're all disarmed.
Okay. Do you know who made the decision to close down the pier that day?
If I'm not mistaken, it was the lieutenant.
Did you understand that in addition to fishing, was it your understanding that these individuals were gathered to exercise constitutional rights?
Objection to the form of the question.
No,
That was not your understanding.
that was not my understanding. I didn't hear anything along that line.
You heard nothing about constitutional
From my
rights that day.
recollection, I can't remember if it was said or not.
To the best of your knowledge and recollection as you sit here today, you do not know if constitutional rights were ever mentioned that day by any of the fishermen.
No, I can't remember. A lot was being said.
Do you understand that people have a First Amendment right to gather in public spaces?
Yes, sir.
Do you understand that, did you understand as you look back today that those people were gathered there to make a political statement of some sort?
Objection to form.
Now back to my recollection, I do remember they mentioning something of sending a letter
Okay.
to command staff.
All right.
But that's all I heard. I can't remember anything else.
You don't remember anything about that they had a constitutional right to carry their guns?
They mentioned a lot of things, I guess, from the pamphlet they were carrying and the statue referring to the statue. Like I said, I would overhear them mentioning it. I can't tell you the exact words they said, but it was mentioned.
Has the department, Miami Beach Police Department, ever told you that something you were trained on by the police academy was wrong and you should no longer do it that way?
Objection to form.
No, not to my recollection.
So you're training both at the police academy and your understanding of Miami Beach Police Department policies are consistent with each other?
Yes.
If you wanted to go double check what the written policy of the Miami Beach Police Department is in regards to dealing with a law-abiding citizen carrying a firearm, where would you look that up?
Objection in the form of the question.
Well, one would be Florida statute for if you're talking about the Florida law,
Okay?
and then if you're talking about Miami, City of Miami Police, we have what we call SOPs,
Okay?
which are standard operations.
Okay. And is
Policies.
that kept in like a notebook or something?
Everything is kept on computer.
Okay. And you can look up those SOPs from in your car?
Yes, sir.
Okay. At any point that day, did you look up the SOPs for dealing with a person lawfully carrying a firearm?
Objection in
No.
the form of the question.
No, sir.
Have you looked up since that day to see if there is a standard operating procedure for dealing with a person lawfully carrying a firearm?
Objection in the form of the question.
I can't remember. Like I said, I did my little research after it was over, but I can't remember.
Okay. Are there things that you know from your work experience with Miami Beach Police Department? Are there things that you know are the standard operating procedure but are not written down in that standard operating procedure?
Objection in the form.
Repeat the question.
Are there things that you have been trained are standard operating procedure that are not actually written down in that book as standard operating?
Everything's trained to us. It's
Objection
written
in the
down.
form.
Everything's trained is taught to us what's trained on that procedure.
So if you told me today that something is training or a standard operating procedure of Miami Beach Police Department, but it's not in that book or on that computer file, then that computer file is what we need to go by.
Objection in the form.
That is our policies. That's where our policies come from.
Officer, what would be your normal response if a citizen pointed a firearm at you?
Objection in the form.
What would be your normal response if a citizen pointed a firearm at you?
Objection in the form.
Draw my firearm.
And you would order them to either drop theirs or you would use defensive force, right?
Objection in the form.
You do both. You give a verbal command, depending on the circumstance.
Also, you said you've watched news reports, you've watched videos regarding sovereign citizens. Before that day, had you ever seen any videos regarding people openly carrying firearms under any state's laws?
Objection in the form.
No.
Have you seen such videos since that day?
Yes.
Do you know if they were here in Florida or elsewhere?
I believe they were in Florida.
Okay. Were they something you found or something you were shown by your department?
I did my research.
Were you trained, when you were trained on the use of a firearm or on making somebody else's firearm safe, were you taught that no gun should, except when you needed to do so in performance of your duties, that no muzzle of a gun should ever be pointed at a person, whether you think the gun is loaded or unloaded?
Objection to form of the question.
Rephrase the question, I'm sorry, so I understand.
Were you trained not to point guns at people except when required in inappropriate policy circumstances by your training?
Objection to form.
By your training, but also your safety,
Okay. You were taught you don't point guns.
Objection to form.
depending
Well,
on the situation.
I am not talking about a situation where you are legally allowed to draw your gun and point it at somebody. I am talking about just the safe handling of firearms in general. Okay?
Okay.
In that circumstance, isn't one of the basic rules of firearm safety, you do not point the muzzle of a firearm at another person?
No.
That's not a basic firearm safety rule?
Well, it's a safety rule. You don't point it at anybody.
Okay.
But once in our job profession, it depends on the circumstance and the investigation of what you're dealing with.
Officer, I'm not asking you about you're pointing the gun at these people in the performance of a detention of individuals. I am talking about in a more general sense. Were you trained that a basic rule of gun safety is not to point the muzzle of a firearm at a person? As a
Objection.
general safety rule.
Objection to form of the question.
Correct.
Okay,
If you're talking about casual, like you and me talking now,
yes.
yes, you don't point your firearm.
Okay. If you take a firearm off somebody and you need to render it safe, you need to drop the magazine, right? If we're talking about a semi-automatic firearm, you have to drop the magazine, right? Yes?
Drop the magazine?
Yes.
Yes, you take the magazine out of the firearm.
Okay. Then you have to work the slide to get the other round out of the chamber if there's one there, right?
Yes.
And when doing this, that muzzle should not be pointed at a person when performing this job, right?
Correct.
Okay. Muzzle should be pointed in a safe direction, right?
Correct.
Generally, that is towards the ground, correct?
Correct.
Okay. We discussed your 40 cal earlier, but I did not ask you about 9mm and 38s. Do you have any knowledge of the maximum effective range of those firearms?
Now you have your what you've heard, but official training, no.
Okay. So, for example, you do not know whether do you have any information or knowledge whether the maximum effective range of any of the firearms you took off these fishermen that day, or that your fellow officers took? Do you have any knowledge that any of those firearms would have had more than a 50-yard maximum effective range?
You're asking if they have effectiveness at 50 yards.
Yes.
Depends on the shooter.
Do they have effective, or is 100 yards within the maximum effective range of any of those firearms that y'all seized that day?
I don't believe so, no.
And possibly not even 50 yards, right?
There could be a possibility.
Do you know what time they released you from your post guarding the end of the pier at the end of the day? After your shift was over?
When you mean when I was relieved by
Yes,
the
sir.
afternoon unit?
Yes, sir.
I have no idea, sir.
Is that in the report somewhere?
I believe all I wrote was that I was relieved by an afternoon unit.
If I show you,
And I believe an afternoon unit, like I said, I didn't write it, I just wrote that I was relieved by an afternoon unit.
if I show you the call for service detail report, will that help you figure out what time you were relieved?
I believe here from what it says I was relieved around 4:29.
That'd be 4:29 p.m., right?
Correct, sir.
Okay.
If I'm correct from what I'm seeing here.
All right. And if you were relieved at 4:29, to your knowledge, was the pier still closed when you were relieved?
The pier was still closed.
Do you know why command staff closed the pier?
I do not know why.
To your understanding, if they had not closed the pier, would they have had to allow these fishermen to remain on the pier?
Objection of form.
I believe so.
To your knowledge, is it a crime in the state of Florida to interfere with the lawful taking of game and fish?
Objection of form.
I'm not 100% sure on that law area
Okay.
when it comes to fishing and gaming, because we know FWC handles a lot of that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to answer something that I'm not 100% sure.
That's fine. Have you ever been asked to go out on the pier and check fishing licenses for anybody other than these armed citizens that day?
No, sir.
Not before or since, have you?
No, sir.
Were you present at the park or on duty on October 20, I believe it's October 26, 2018, when some people from Florida Carry came back to the pier on that date?
I can't remember. I know I was for one event that they told me to stay in the parking lot area.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm not 100% sure for one of those events, yeah. So, but I can't remember if it was that day.
Okay. You know if you checked anybody's fishing license the second time you were there?
No, sir. But I only went to one.
Other than the one we're here about today?
I went to this incident, yes.
Yes.
But the one that happened after, I can't remember if it was that day that you're mentioning, the date you mentioned,
Right?
that I was posted on the parking lot.
Okay.
Or
could've
was
been-
it another time?
I got you. All right, I have no further questions.
You mentioned that the people on the pier said they had sent a letter. Were you ever informed of this demonstration prior to the date of the demonstration?
Object to form?
No, sir.
You're aware of the fact that Florida is not an open carry state, correct?
Object to form?
Yes.
And that in Florida, in order to open carry, you have to be able to have one of those exceptions, correct?
Yes.
And when someone is open carrying, can you tell if someone is a convicted felon because they got a fishing rod and a line in the water?
Object to form?
No.
Can you tell if they have a domestic violence injunction against them under those same circumstances?
No.
Object to form?
Can you tell any of the statutory affirmative defenses just by looking at an individual?
No.
In the context of these individuals that were there that day, you were approaching individuals. Did you hear someone mention sovereign citizens before you went on to the pier?
Object to form?
I cannot remember.
Okay. When you're approaching individuals that might be part of sovereign citizens, that you are told might be casing the pier, under those circumstances, are you allowed to draw your weapon?
Object to form?
Yes, for our safety.
Well, you're approaching individuals. If someone has their hand in the air with a object that you don't know what it is, would you instruct them to put the object down?
Yes.
Form?
I have no further questions.
Sir, you were just
Wait.
at, oh, sorry, go ahead. Oh, sorry, Rob, my apologies.
Rosenwald, do you have any questions?
I don't have anything, thank you.
Okay.
So, Officer Garcia, you were asked if you could tell just by looking at somebody that they were a felon or had a domestic violence conviction or things like that. So I'm going to ask the question a little bit different way. When you approached those individuals on the pier that day, did you have any knowledge or reason to suspect that any of the individuals there were convicted felons?
Once again, we were only given the information.
Informative question.
We were only given from what the information we gathered from dispatch and the park ranger. We took into our safety.
Okay.
But by looking at them, we don't read minds, we can't determine.
I'm going to ask the question again. Based on the information you were given, were you given any information that you can recollect here today that led you to believe any of those individuals were convicted felons?
No.
Object to the form of the question.
Did you get any information from any third party that would have given you a reasonable suspicion that any of those people had been convicted of a crime of domestic violence?
Once again,
Object to the form of the
only by the information we gathered. Sorry, only by the information we gathered. But at the time, no.
Okay. Is it your understanding that you are allowed to investigate any person carrying a firearm to determine if they are a convicted felon or a person been convicted of domestic violence?
Objection to the form.
Once again, it's pending the investigation. We do records check to determine who this person is, to identify and make sure they're not convicted felons or the firearm isn't stolen or used in a crime.
Okay. You understand people have a Fourth Amendment right to be free from unreasonable search and seizures.
Yes.
Are you telling me that the mere carrying of a firearm allows you to search them because they have a gun?
Objection
Once
to the
again.
form. That's 9. This is the last time, and
Once
that's
again.
not proper
Once again.
redirect. Go ahead, answer the question for the 9th time.
It's our investigation. It's what we're called for.
Okay. No further questions.
We'll read.
We're going off the record at 12:29.